Shri Gurubhyo Namah students, welcome to Online Teaching Academy Ekalaiva. Class 10 History, the name of the lesson is Nationalism in India. In the previous session, we learned what is non-cooperation movement, why Gandhiji has decided to launch non-cooperation movement, how did it start in the towns and cities, and why did it slow down in towns and cities. Today we are going to continue with the session. Today we are going to see how the movement spread to the countryside and in the plantations. Rebellion in the countryside. There was an uprising in the countryside. So the movement spread among peasants and tribals. In Awadh, the movement was led by Baba Ramachandra, a sannyasi. In the region of Awadh, it was led by Baba Ramachandra. The movement was against talukdars and landlords as they demanded high rents and other cesses from peasants. The anger of the peasants was on the talukdars and landlords because they were demanding a high rent for the leased land from the peasants. Peasants had taken the land for lease from the talukdars and landlords. For that they have to pay rent, and the rent was exorbitantly high. They were asking for a reduction in that, but the talukdars and landlords did not accept for it. And other cesses on top of the exorbitantly high rent, they have to pay other cesses. Cesses means additional taxes for the base tax. So peasants had to do beggar. Beggar is a system where the peasants were forced to do labor without taking any payment from the landlords. Had no security of tenure. They don't have any security for the land, for the leased land. They were evicted from the land because the landlords thought that the peasants could take over the land from them. For that reason, there were no security of tenure for the peasants. The peasant movement demanded reduction of revenue, abolition of beggar system, and abolition of social boycott of oppressive landlords. Social boycott is a system in which a person or a group of persons were not allowed to mingle in the society. So, the three demands were put forth by the peasants in Awadh region. Nai Dhobi Bands were organized by panchayats. The services of barbers and washermen were deprived for the landlords. They refused to do this service to the landlords. By this way, they were showing their anger towards the talukdars and landlords. Awadh Kisan Sabha. By October 1920, Awadh Kisan Sabha was set up, which was headed by Jawaharlal Nehru, Baba Ramachandra and few others. Farmers' unions were set up in Awadh region. Within a month, 300 branches were set up. Congress took effort to integrate the Awadh peasant struggle with a non-cooperation movement. So the Congress took effort to initiate this movement with a non-cooperation movement. That is the peasants uprising with a non-cooperation movement. As the movement spread in 1921, the houses of talukdars and merchants were attacked, bazaars were looted, and grain wards were taken over. Hordes of grains have been taken over by the peasants. The interpretation of this movement by the peasants taken in a wrong way. That is why they attacked the merchants and talukdars, and they looted the bazaars, and grain hoards which have been stacked in the landlords' houses have been taken over by the peasants. It took a different way. The Congress was unhappy with this. Local leaders told peasants that Gandhiji has declared that no taxes were to be paid and land was to be redistributed among the poor. The local leaders conveyed the message in such a way that Gandhiji had told the peasants not to pay the rent and the lands will be redistributed among the poor. But Gandhiji did not say so. The message was conveyed wrongly. Now let us get into the tribal area, how this national movement, how this non-cooperation movement was interpreted. The colonial government had closed large forest areas. The British government prevented tribals' entry into forest to graze their cattle or to collect fuel wood and fruits. Livelihoods affected, traditional rights denied, which enraged them. The tribals. We are going to talk about a tribal community in Gudam Hills in Andhra Pradesh. In the 9th standard history, you would have read about forest colonialism lesson. Now, according to the Forest Act that was initiated by the British government, tribals were not allowed to enter into the forest. The traditional rights were denied for them. Basically, the tribals' life is so intimately connected with the forest. So, they could not collect fuel wood, they could not collect any fruit, they could not graze their cattle in the forest. All these traditional rights were denied for them. So, they were so angry with the British government, British officials. So, they were forced to do beggar for road building, and because of that the hill people revolted, their uprising because of these rights, denial of these rights. So, the tribals of Gudam Hills, Andhra Pradesh started the movement under the leadership of Alluri Sitaram Raju. The Gudam rebels attacked police stations, attempted to kill British officials and carried on guerrilla warfare for achieving Swaraj. Again, here also we can see that the tribals indulging into violent activities. Even in the countryside, we saw the peasants indulged in violent activities. Alluri Sitaram Raju, an interesting figure in the history. Alluri Sitaram Raju, who claimed that he had variety of special powers. The rebels considered him as an incarnation of God. The rebels believed that he was an incarnation of God. Alluri Sitaram Raju was inspired by the non-cooperation movement of Gandhiji and persuaded his followers to wear khadi and give up drinking. He was a disciple of Gandhiji, followed the footsteps of Gandhiji. So, he persuaded the tribals to give up drinking and wear khadi. He asserted that India could be liberated only by the use of force. In this opinion, he differed with Gandhiji. Gandhiji said non-violent movement should be there, but he says that with the force only we can win the battle with the British. So, finally, Raju was captured and executed in the year 1924. So, let us understand now how the plantation workers in Assam interpreted Swaraj. So, meaning of freedom of plantation workers, free movement, they wanted to move freely in the confined place. Plantation where tea or coffee is grown and acres of land, very huge land is confined, in that workers were working. So, they wanted to move freely inside the confined place, retain link with their village. From where they have come, from the villages, they wanted to have a link with their village. That was denied to them. Leave plantation without permission. They wanted to leave the plantation without any permission, to go out and come back to that as they like. Inland Immigration Act 1859 restricted the movement of the plantation workers. It restricted, according to this act, the movement, the plantation workers were restricted to move out of the place. For them, Swaraj meant the right to move freely. So, according to plantation workers, Swaraj means right to move freely, that's all. So, hearing of non-cooperation movement, they defied the authorities. They defied the authorities, means they disobeyed the commands or the orders of the authorities, higher officials, and left the plantations where they were working and they started to head home. So, believed Gandhi Raj would give them lands in their villages. So, they thought that when they go back to their villages, they would be given back a piece of land for their livelihood. So, thinking that they left the plantation, stranded on the way, they got stuck on the way because they didn't know about the strike in railway and steamer. and they were captured and brutally beaten by the police and brought back to the plantation. So, withdrawal of non-cooperation movement. So, we started from the beginning that how it started in the towns and cities and how the movement was spread to the countryside and how the tribals interpreted and how the plantation workers interpreted Swaraj. One incident that happened made Gandhiji to withdraw the non-cooperation movement. Let us see what was that incident. The movement became violent in some places. In 1922 at Chauri Chaura in Gorakhpur district in Uttar Pradesh, a peaceful demonstration in a bazaar turned into a violent clash with the police. People became violent and set fire for the police station. 22 policemen were killed in that. Gandhiji was against this violence. He always was preaching for non-violent satyagraha. So, he thought that it was necessary to train the people in non-violent satyagraha. So, Gandhiji decided to withdraw the non-cooperation movement. So, he put a halt for that. So, let us understand what is the significance of this non-cooperation movement, what were the features, what is that we have got from this non-cooperation movement. So, the non-cooperation movement was a mass movement, no doubt about it. Lakhs of Indians have participated in that. And in a peaceful manner, that is very, very important. First time, in a non-violent manner, they have participated. So, it shook the British government and they were stumped by the extent of the movement. They did not expect that Indians would unite and fight against them. And all these days they were practicing divide and rule policy against Muslims and Hindus. Now they could see first time Hindus and Muslims got united and fought for their country. And communal harmony was seen first time in the country. It was a non-violent movement which popularized the Gandhian satyagraha, non-violent satyagraha. Peasants and tribals movements became a part of the Indian national movement. First time the peasants without any fear they came out and protested against British officials, and tribals also came out and fought for their traditional rights. As a result of this movement, people became conscious of their political rights. They were not afraid of the British officials. This movement also established Gandhiji as a leader of the masses. So, when we talk about this movement, non-cooperation movement, it had given lot of features, lot of ideas for the masses, and when the goals have not been achieved with this, because Gandhiji has withdrawn because of the violent activities that has taken place in Chauri Chaura. So, we are going to see what happened next in the next session. Thank you, children. To receive our online lessons, please press the subscribe button and you will receive the latest updates. Thank you once again.